And so when it comes to parenting, instead of thinking first, what do I do? We have to change our first question to what is my job? And I'll give you a definition that actually works for any situation. In my mind, a parent always has two jobs. One is setting boundaries, and the second is connecting to your kid's lived experience, which is another way of saying validating their feelings. And let me explain both, because these jobs work in tandem, and most parenting approaches focus on one job to the exclusion of the other, and that's why they're incomplete. Let's start with boundaries. Boundaries are key decisions we make. They're limits we set. This is a definition of a boundary I love, because I love definitions that allow me to kind of know if I'm doing the right thing, right? That like kind of give me a rubric just to understand. So all the time I hear from parents, and honestly, I hear from non-parents, just adults, my mother-in-law does not respect my boundaries. My kid does not listen to my boundaries. Let me share my definition of boundaries, and then we can hear together why those things don't really make sense. A boundary is something you tell your kid you will do, and it requires your kid to do nothing. So there's two parts to that rubric. Okay, so first, a boundary is something I tell someone I will do. Okay. And it requires the other person to do nothing. So over and over, I hear frustration from parents. My kids don't respect my boundaries. And I'll say, tell me about a boundary you set. And they say, oh, no jumping on the couch. My kid is jumping on the couch. And I look at them and I say, stop jumping on the couch. We don't do that. And then we look at that kind of definition. Did you tell your kid something you will do? And they say,
no. Yeah.
No. Does the success of your boundary require your kid to do nothing? No. And this is like an aha moment where they're like, am I not setting a boundary? But no, you're not. You're making a request. And we have to make requests all the time, but requests aren't boundaries. This is a boundary. And boundaries really ensure that we keep our kids safe. That doesn't mean risk-free, but we keep them safe. The reason we set a boundary around TV time is because we don't think it's great or safe for a kid to watch TV 3 hours after their bedtime. The reason I hold my kid when they're crossing the street, when they're flailing and saying, let me go, isn't because I want to have control over my kid. It's because I want to keep them safe and they're not exactly in the right mind space to be crossing the street. Those are boundaries. Now, to be clear, kids have one reaction to boundaries. Not happy.
And it's, to be fair, it's not kids, right? Like when people set boundaries with me, I'm not like super thrilled about that either.
100%. A boundary is really a way of saying to someone else, like, you want something and I'm saying no. Nobody likes having their desires thwarted. Nobody does well. So when you set a boundary, and this is so important, because we have some unconscious belief, and me too, that like, I'm going to set some really good boundary for my kid. My kid's going to be like, yes, that is amazing parenting, Mom. Thank you. Right? Like, you're right. I do need to go to bed. Thank you for turning off the TV. Never. No child in my house or any child I know who's normal has ever said that. When you set a boundary, which is part one of your job, your kid actually does their job. They feel their feelings. And I know that's an inconvenient truth, but the reason that's our kid's job is kids can't develop skills to manage feelings they don't allow themselves to have. And so if you want your kid to be an adult who can manage frustration and anger and not be a 30-year-old who acts like a 2-year-old, then you want your kid to feel all the feelings when they're 2 and not when they're 30. So then my kid gets upset. I say TV time's over. I turn it off. My kid does not say thank you. They say, why? And all my friends get more screen time and you're the worst, yada, yada, yada. And now it's actually amazing. I can do part 2 of my job. I validate the feelings they have, which often come in response to setting boundaries, which would sound like this. Oh, you really wish you could watch TV. Or, oh, it's the worst when you're watching a show and you can't finish it because TV time is up. Or, oh, I really hate when my TV time is over too. I get it. What I'm doing, and this is really important, is I'm seeing my kids' feelings as real. I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to think the extent or intensity of the feeling is right or wrong. It just is. I'm seeing it as real. And there's a wash, rinse, repeat. Because when you practice this, you see, wait, I'm just doing the same thing over and over. I set a boundary I think is right. My kid gets upset. I validate the feeling. And then this is important. Because parents then say, oh, so then just because my kid's upset, they get to watch another show? No, no. You validate the feeling while you continue to hold the boundary. That's what's really important. People think when I validate my kids' feelings, I then let the feelings take over the driver's seat. No. Validating feelings goes hand in hand with holding your boundaries. So another example, hey, sweetie, it's time to leave the park. My kid is going to say, no, I want to stay in the park. I might say something to them like, look, if it's too hard to walk to the car, I will pick you up and carry you because it's really time to go. Okay. Maybe your kid listens then, maybe they don't. If they don't, I'm really going to do it. I'm going to pick them up. Again, what is a kid going to do? They're going to kick and scream. And as I carry my kid to the car, I'm going to do the other part of my job. Oh, it stinks to leave before you want. Or maybe even, oh, you probably wish you were an adult and could make all your own decisions. I get that. Leaving the park is so hard. But I am not bringing them back to the park. I am saying that while I am carrying them in a sturdy way to the car. And that job, boundaries, validation, in almost any situation, Laurie, when parents are stuck, it's actually because we're no longer doing our job. And that's always an orienting principle I come back to.